let's look at questions you are likely to get. As a Bible-believing Christian who takes seriously what both God the Father and God the Son said about marriage. God the Father instituted marriage in the book of Genesis. In the Gospels, Jesus was asked about marriage, and he reiterated the definition of marriage when he said, "Don't you know that he created the male and female from the beginning? Therefore, a man will leave his father and mother, cleave to his wife, they will become one flesh." If you hold that position as a Christian, at some point, you're going to be asked questions. Now, you are, I'm sure, going to be respectful of people, sensitive to people. You're going to be a good friend. That means that as Christians, we are not called to run around correcting everybody we see. But when we believe something, eventually what we believe is going to come out. If you breathe, you believe. If you believe, you express. And those two facts are not going to change anytime soon. Everybody believes something, and eventually what we believe is going to come out. So if you get to know me, right off the bat, I'm not going to tell you everything I believe, but as we get to know each other, there's no way you're not going to find out certain things about me. I go to church. I read the Bible. There are some things I don't do. If you're getting to know me and you invite me out to a topless club to have some drinks, I'm going to say, no, thank you. And you're going to say, why? And I'm going to say, that doesn't quite jive with what I believe. And you're going to say, well, what do you believe? You see, it's a natural consequence. Eventually, if somebody knows you, they have to know what you believe. Just like if somebody gets to know you, they're also going to know what you like. They're going to know what you don't like. And eventually, yeah, they're going to get to know what you believe. That's the way it goes. And that's true of anybody, Christian or non-Christian. If you get to know somebody, you get to know where they stand. Now, that leaves us with a challenge as stewards of truth. God chose to use people to communicate his truth. Now, that means that if you are a Christian, you have got a commission. The truth that you learn eventually is going to be the truth you express. God could express truth without you and me. And if I were God, that's the way I would do it, because people mess everything up. God could just speak in a big manly voice and everybody would listen and it would be perfect. But he made a choice, I think largely because of his love for humanity. He wants you and I to be part of his work. So he commissions us as stewards of truth. Now, this I hope you can get. You and I've got a three-part challenge: to know the truth, to be conformed to the truth, and to express the truth. All three, okay? The first is to know the truth. There is such a thing as truth. There is nothing more important than you learning what it is. You must apply yourself to knowing truth. The truth of the Bible, the truth of science, the truth of human nature. You must be, if you're going to be effective at anything, you've got to develop a love for truth. Know the truth. First job. Second job, don't go shooting your mouth off about truth that you haven't first applied to your own life. God forbid any of us go out to the world and say, this is what's right and this is what's wrong, if we haven't first applied those truths to us. So, if I am using pornography, or if I'm sleeping with my girlfriend, or if I'm stealing things from the store, I got to get my own act cleaned up before I go out and start talking about morality to people. So that's your second job. Be conformed to the truth. You learn it, And then by the grace of God, you say, Lord, what I have learned, help me to live. And then you express truth. You express the truth you have learned and the truth you are being conformed by. And that's what gives you credibility with people. Nobody takes a hypocrite seriously, and nobody takes a Pharisee seriously. So, if you are saying one thing and doing another, nobody will take you seriously. If you're judgmental and holier than thou with people, nobody will take you seriously. You must let the truth conform your own life first, and then you express what you've learned. Now, what's going to happen when you do that? You're going to have conversations. Conversations change lives. They change lives. Jesus had a conversation in John chapter 3 with a Pharisee named Nicodemus who had honest questions. Jesus met up with a Samaritan woman who had honest questions. In the book of Acts, Philip met up with an Ethiopian eunuch who had honest questions. People have honest questions about what we believe, and they have every right to ask those questions. You are going to be asked these questions. So with that in mind, let's dive in and see if we can get better prepared to answer the questions when they ask them. The first one has to do with something I mentioned in the last session, the inborn theory. A lot of people already assume people are born gay. It's just, they think it's a fact. And therefore, if you say you believe that homosexuality is not God's will, which, by the way, I find that more effective than just saying homosexuality is immoral. I like to bring God into the equation and say, well, this is not what he intended. If you hold that view, people are going to say, well, wait a minute. How can it be wrong to be gay if I was born gay? That's like telling me it's wrong to be born with whatever race I'm born in, or it's wrong to be a man with two eyeballs. I was born with two eyeballs. How can that be wrong? And that's why a lot of gay people go, come on, how can that be wrong? I was born this way. And if I was born this way, don't you think it's weird for God to say it's a sin for you to be what you were born? That's a very honest question. It's a very honest question. Now, in response to that, a few things you can point out. Most gay people you meet are going to tell you, hey, I felt this way from early in life, and I believe them, because I did too. From the time I was a very young boy, younger than most of you, all of you, I felt I was that way. So it tends to show up early. That's why a lot of people think they were born that way. They felt it early. It doesn't mean it's inborn. That theory has not been universally accepted. That is to say, right now, as of today in 2019, nobody has proven that people are born gay. So right off the bat, it's inaccurate to say, since people are born gay, God must have made them that way, because there's no proof that people are born gay. But is it possible that they were? Yes. There are all kinds of things people are born with that are not necessarily God's will. You probably know what alcoholism is. There's a lot of very good research that shows that the tendency towards alcoholism really may be inborn, might even be genetic. Some people are born with a high susceptibility to alcoholism. A lot of people may well be, and there's good research showing this, born with a real high susceptibility to drug addiction. To be honest with you, I think I was. I started doing drugs when I was 11 years old. And my first drug was methadone, and then I moved on to marijuana, hashish, and LSD, and then barbiturates. And I got hooked like that. And to this day, I mean, when I smoked cigarettes, I was smoked 2.5 packs a day. Anything I do full throttle. I have a very addictive personality, so I could easily get addicted to paper clips if I started snorting them. I really could. And there are some addictions I still have. Nothing like drugs. Well, coffee's a drug, and I You don't want to even know me if I haven't had my coffee. I am so unchristian before I've had my coffee. I mean, really, it's bad news. So, and I accept that. That's just, that's a fact. It's not a good fact, but it's a fact. The point is, addiction runs in my family. My older brother is still drug addicted. I had an alcoholic parent and an alcoholic grandparent, and I'm sure it goes back even further than that. So, you know what? That may well be that it was inborn. This is really interesting. There is some research suggesting that there may be a violence gene, that some people have a genetic structure that makes them predisposed to violence. And court cases now are being heard where the defense attorney is saying, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client has the violence gene. Therefore, it's not entirely his fault that he shot that person, because violence is in his genes. There was a story that came out about 20 years ago. Time magazine covered it. It was a cover story of theirs. And it said, adultery. It may be in our genes. And the story suggested that men are genetically programmed to commit adultery. That we can't help it. We're just born that way. Now, at some point, people are going to ask themselves, wait a minute, even if you can prove these things are inborn, alcoholism, drug addiction, violence, adultery, are you going to say that those things are good because they're inborn? Of course not. But why? Well, it's very simple. We don't judge what's right or wrong by what caused it. That's secondary. Maybe there is a violence gene. Maybe there is a chemical dependency gene. I really don't buy that one about men being born with an adultery gene, but I don't know, maybe. I just think it's a lot simpler than that. Men are pigs, and everybody knows that. So that's the answer. But the question becomes, even if it is inborn, does that make it right? Of course not. We don't judge what's right or wrong by what causes it. We judge it by a different, higher standard. The same is true of sexual desire. There may be all kinds of sexual desires people were born with that are not God's will. And that's why we don't determine our inborn condition as being the final way of determining what is right or wrong, because a lot of the feeling we have from early in life is not necessarily right. So a number of unhealthy tendencies may be inborn. That may very well be true. That's why people will often say to me, oh, well, what are you going to do when they finally discover a gay gene and they prove gays are born that way? Well, I'm not going to do anything. It's not going to change any of what I believe. I go, okay, well, then it's inborn. So what? A lot of unhealthy things may be inborn. Now, I don't want to be too glib about this. If you have a lesbian friend or a gay friend, whether it's inborn or not, I'll tell you this, it's deep, okay? They feel that deeply. So let's not treat homosexuality like it's nail biting. If you bite your nails, you can just stop that. It's not that hard. Homosexual feelings, we got to be compassionate enough to say, okay, man, you've got something really deep going on there. And I understand that, and I respect that. And I really want to tell you, I congratulate you if you are going to follow God's will and live an obedient life. You're really taking up your cross. I admire that. Because it is not easy to say, I am going to say no to my deepest sexual feelings. I'm going to put that away forever, and I'm never going to act on it. You know, in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, there is a great line where Romeo, before he meets Juliet, is really in love with this girl named Rosamond. And his friends are making fun of him because he's crazy about her and she doesn't even like him, and he's just, you know. And they're teasing him, and one of his friends really gets on him, and Romeo says about his friend, he jest at scars that never felt a wound. He jest at scars that never felt a wound. That means he can laugh at something that he doesn't understand because he doesn't know what it's like. It's what a lot of Christians do, I'm sad to say. If somebody has a problem they don't understand, a lot of them go, oh, well, just stop it, and it'll be fine. Just pray about it, be gone with it, decide to stop feeling that way, and everything will be great. That can be a very cruel thing to say. It's almost like if somebody lost their mother or their father or a good friend of theirs died, and you go to them and go, oh, well, don't be upset, he's in heaven now. So, what's the problem? Well, the problem is my heart's broken. That's the problem, and I shouldn't be laughed at for that. The same is true of somebody who comes in the church and says, I'm gay or lesbian. We want to go, okay, on the one hand, I want you to follow God and follow God's will. On the other hand, I also know it's going to be hard to do that, and you know what? I'm here. I'm here, because I know that that's not going to be easy, and believe me, it's not. Now, the fact that it's not easy doesn't mean anybody gets a pass, and that's not true of any of us, right? I think as you and I go along in life, we're all going to agree one of the hardest things to do as a believer is to live obediently in your sexuality, to not allow your sexual feelings to take you outside of God's will, because much of what you feel sexually, if you go with it, it will take you outside God's will. God's standards don't come naturally to us. That's why we need the power of the Holy Spirit to equip us and enable us to live godly lives. That's not always such an easy thing. So let's never make light of that. But the fact is, inborn does not mean God ordained. So even if it is inborn, we can be compassionate, we can be sensitive, but let's not cave. The fact that something is inborn, if indeed it is inborn, does not mean God intended it. That leads to a next common argument, which goes basically like this: I can't change. I can't change. I'm gay, or I'm lesbian, and I can't do anything about it. That's the way I feel. I can't just decide to have different feelings, which is very true. It's very true. But that's not the same as saying I can't change. Let me make this very personal, and then let's make it more theoretical. Let me start with the personal. I had to do something that all of us have to do at some point. At some point, every one of you will have to go before God and say, I want this, but you require that. Therefore, I choose that. Give me the strength now to pursue what you want. It may be a wrong relationship you got into, a bad habit you have, a tendency you have, I don't know, whatever it is. At some point, every Christian faces that point. It's a crisis point where you go, Lord, there is something about me that I really want to do or express, and I know it will be a sin if I do. But the fact that I know it's a sin doesn't mean I don't want it. I may have fallen in love with the wrong person. I may have picked up a drug habit. I may be cheating in math. I don't know, whatever it is. And at that point, we make a decision. I'm going to then change. But there are different ways we change. So let me explain. When somebody says, I wonder whether or not I can change. I'm gay, and I don't know if I can change. I'm lesbian, I don't know if I can change. There are 5 different ways I believe people change. Now, the first one is very basic, but let's really lock into how important it is, and that is the change from death to life. When I became a Christian, I came from death to life. That is conversion, and we believe in that. The second is a change of heart towards God and sin. If a lesbian or gay person says, hey, can I change? One of the first things we can promise them is this: if you are a Christian, then God can change your heart towards that sin. Now, if you're not a Christian, let's go for the first change. You need to be born again. If I had a lesbian friend and she's saying, hey, I'm lesbian, what do I do about it? I'd say, hey, let's forget about that. If you're not a Christian, I want you to get saved. It doesn't matter that much whether you're a lesbian or whether you're a whatever you are, unsaved means unsaved. So we want you to come from death to life. Secondly, a change of heart towards sin. When I realized that God was calling me to repent of homosexuality in 1984, I had to admit to God, I love this sin. I know it's a sin. And I'm sorry to say it, Dad, but I love it. I don't want to give it up. What the heck am I going to do about that? And what I found God reassuring me was, I can change your heart towards the sin. And really, I want to strongly recommend this. If there's anything in your life that you know is outside God's will, but you keep hanging on to it, it's easy to do. I get that. Ask God to cause you to hate what he hates. And that is a prayer he will answer. He can soften your heart so that you come to hate the thing that he hates. If you tend to be a big mouth and you shoot off your mouth without even thinking and you hurt people, and you say stupid things, and you walk away going, oh, what an idiot, why did I say that? Okay, but the next time it happens, you just can't wait to shoot your mouth off again. It's very common. God can cause you to hate shooting your mouth off. He really can. So you ask God to give you a change of heart towards the sin. When I started to actually feel like, Lord, a miracle has happened in me. I haven't changed. I'm still attracted to men, but I actually am coming to feel like I don't want that sin in my life anymore, and I want your will more than I want that sin. And the fact that that happened, that was one of the greatest changes in my life, a change of heart towards sin. The third is a change in response towards sin. If you have a gay or lesbian friend who says, I want to follow Jesus, but I don't know what to do with my feelings, you can promise that, hey, when you are tempted, God will give you the strength to say no to the temptation. Now, let's be clear on this. Don't ever promise a gay person that they will never again feel temptations towards that. That's an irresponsible thing to promise. But what you can promise is, hey, when we are tempted, he gives us the grace to say no to the temptation. And that's a major change. One of the biggest changes I see in the lives of people I work with is when they're tempted and they respond differently. That's a big change. Then a change in heart and mind. Last night I talked about a change I experienced when I got back into the church, because when people are involved in sexual sin, it does something to the way they think. And oftentimes the big change they experience is the way they are thinking about themselves, the way they think about others. When I was gay, I thought men were there for sex and women were there for friendship. And God turned all that around. I began to see men as there for friendship, and the woman I fell in love with, I began to see as a legitimate sex partner who I was going to marry. That was a change in my heart and in my mind. And then finally, change in internal responses. This is where it gets dicey, because people generally don't like to admit they have temptations, and neither do I. Neither do I. But temptations are always there. Temptations of some sort. So when I repented in 1984 and I said, okay, I will no longer be sexually active with men. I'm not going to look at porn anymore. I'm done with all of that. That didn't make the temptations go away. I had to say, Lord, I will live obediently, but there's nothing I can do about the way I feel. But the longer I lived obediently, two things happened: a change in frequency and a change in intensity. Those were major changes. One thing I noticed is that the homosexual desires came up a lot less frequently. The longer I said no to them, the less often I felt them. And then I found that when I did feel them, they were less and less strong. So that to this day, I think I could be tempted. I don't really feel tempted, but I think it could happen. So I'm not going to say I'm so delivered from being gay that I could never in a million years be attracted to that again. That may not be true. I'm not going to give into it if that attraction comes up, but I can't guarantee it'll never come up. What I do know is that the power of the temptation so diminished that I cannot say that I really feel it. I don't intend to feel it again, but if I do feel it again, I know what to do. It's much better, I think, to be prepared for temptation than to wait for temptation to go away. So for all those reasons, if somebody says, well, now wait a minute, I want to live an obedient life, but I can't change, I would point out, of course you can change. In this life, though, and this is really important, nobody changes so completely that we are exempt from temptations. Until Jesus comes or until you die, you will always have a temptation, one way or another. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means you're still human. You live in a world that is fallen, that's full of temptation. You still have your old nature that wants to give in to the temptation, and you still have Satan who wants to give you temptation. So for all those reasons, temptation happens. We are not made godly by not having temptation. We are made godly by saying no to temptation. There is a big difference. And if you can look at it like you look at pumping iron, people get stronger by adding more weight to the muscle that they're working through resistance. So every temptation you resist, that's a curl. That's a bench press. Every time you resist it, what's happening? You're getting stronger. So it's one of the ways we know we're getting better. Now that leads to a third common question, which kind of goes like this. Why do you hate us? I'm gay, I'm lesbian, I'm trans. You're Christian, you hate me. And it's a kind of a shocking statement. Because I've never met a Christian who really hates lesbians or gays. I've met some Christians who don't do a very good job talking about it, but I can't really say they hate them. But something happened in the last, I think, about 15 years, and it was really clever. It's very political, and it's very smart. The political pro-gay movement decided that if it could teach people that disagreement is the same as hatred, that shuts down all disagreement. Because we all believe it's wrong to hate. It's not right to hate people. Therefore, if we can be convinced that disagreeing with homosexuality, disapproving of homosexuality, is the same thing as hating lesbians and gays, you know what we're going to do? We're going to shut up. Because we're going to go, I don't want to be a hater. But if you think about it, it's very illogical. There is a difference between hatred and prejudice and conviction. There really is. Hatred, that's intense hostility or aversion. Now, when you feel hatred, you know what? You know it. It's no mystery to you. If you hate somebody, you'll know it. Nobody needs to tell you. It's intense hostility or aversion. Prejudice is basically adverse opinion or leaning formed without just grounds. It's basically learned ignorance, prejudice. People who hate gays and lesbians want to hurt them. You and I don't want to hurt them. People who are prejudiced against gays and lesbians think that they are better than gays or lesbians. Now, if you really think that you are better than a lesbian or a gay, then yeah, you're prejudiced. But if you believe that lesbianism or homosexuality falls short of God's will, no, you're not saying you're better than them. You're saying they're a sinner just like you are, but that is a sin. That's not prejudice. Conviction is simply a belief system, a strong persuasion or belief. So when somebody says, Joe, why do you hate gays and lesbians? I like to say, do you believe anything is wrong? Well, say, of course I do. I think some things are wrong. Do you hate the people who you think are doing something wrong? Well, no, of course I don't hate them. I just think they're wrong. Well, thank you very much. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's the point. There's a big difference between disapproval and hatred. If I hate you, I want to hurt you. If I disapprove of something in your life, I don't want to hurt you. Now, real important point. Does anybody completely, in every way, approve of anybody else? No. No. I don't care how much you love somebody. If you really know somebody, there is no way you're going to like everything about that person, and there is no way you're going to approve of everything about that person. Therefore, it's unreasonable to say, if you don't approve of this part of my life, you hate me. Now, my wife has been my wife for 32 years now, and that woman loves me. She really loves me. She loves me like nobody has ever loved me. There ain't no way she approves of everything about me. And if she were here, she would love to tell you. She would love, and she wouldn't have enough time to tell you how many things about me she disapproves of, which is why I'm glad she's home right now. Because she would take up the rest of my time. There is a lot about me she does not like. There is a lot about me she does not approve of. Wouldn't it be crazy if I said, honey, if you don't like everything about me, you must hate me? If that were the case, nobody could have a relationship with anybody. Nobody completely approves of everything about anybody. That's an impossible standard. So I like to use the word reasonable when I'm talking about this kind of thing. Can you please be reasonable with me, I say? Is it reasonable to demand that I approve of everything about you in order for me to love you? Is it reasonable for you to say, I hate you, when I simply disagree with you? Is it reasonable for you to try to tell me what I feel as though you know better than I do what I feel? Because believe me, when I hate, I know it. And I'm telling you, I don't hate you. That's reasonable, you see? And there are times when you're reasoning with people, that's different than preaching to them or evangelizing them. You're trying to reason with them. Can we be reasonable about this? And by the way, can we be mature about this? Can we be mature about this? And there really is a place for saying, don't you think it's kind of childish the way you're boxing me into a corner? You've asked me what I believe. I've told you what I believe. And based on that alone, you're telling me I hate you, I'm bigoted, I'm mean, I'm rejecting you. Wow. Isn't that a little immature? Don't mature people realize they can have differences and still have a relationship? Isn't that one of the marks of both intellectual and emotional maturity? Don't those words like diversity and pluralism and tolerance mean anything anymore? See, so in all of those ways you can reason with people when they throw out the hatred argument. That leads to a fourth very common argument, which goes something like this. You believe the Bible. Okay, that's nice. The guys who wrote the Bible, when they talked about sex, they didn't know what they were talking about. It was centuries ago. They didn't go to our universities. They didn't know about our latest studies. They didn't enroll in a genders issues program. Therefore, Moses and Paul, who are the two biblical writers, by the way, who addressed homosexuality, those guys condemned something they didn't understand. So the authors of the Bible didn't understand homosexuality, which means we shouldn't take the Bible seriously on that subject, because the guys who wrote it, they didn't know what they were talking about. Now, first and foremost, what is one of the primary things we know about the Bible? It is inspired. Inspired means that a higher power inspired the authors. Therefore, the mind of the higher power transcends the minds of the authors. If we believe that the Holy Spirit inspired the authors of the Bible, we have to ask ourselves a question. Is the Holy Spirit dumb? Did the Holy Spirit not go to school? Does the Holy Spirit not understand what we in our brilliance understand now? No, of course not. The Holy Spirit is the third person of the Trinity. What is one of the attributes of God? omniscience. He knows all. When the Holy Spirit inspired Moses to condemn homosexuality, the Holy Spirit knew everything about homosexuality that we do now and more. Therefore, the Spirit inspiring Moses knew more than Moses, and the Spirit inspiring Paul knew more than Paul. Therefore, I am not concerned with whether or not the authors of the Bible fully understood everything they wrote about. I would bet you that Daniel and John the Beloved, for example, did not understand fully some of the visions and revelations they were getting, but they were still inspired to record them. But that said, we got to look at the intellectual level of Moses and Paul. Moses was raised in Egypt. Paul was a learned Roman citizen and schooled in Hebrew thought, and culturally very sophisticated. In fact, in a lot of Paul's writings, he quoted the philosophers and the poets of the time. The guy was well-read. Now, this is an interesting point. When Paul wrote to both Corinth and when he wrote his letter to Timothy, in both of those books, he condemned homosexuality. He also condemned it in the book of Romans. At the time he wrote, Plato's Republic was very well known and well read. Plato's Republic had a lot to say about homosexual sex and homosexual love and the homosexual orientation. Paul had to have been aware of that. To say that Paul didn't know anything written by Plato would be like saying Billy Graham didn't know anything about Sigmund Freud. That's not very likely. An educated man would know about the writings of his time. So I really believe if Moses or Paul, both of whom were highly educated, in secular terms, by the way, not just Judeo terms or Christian terms, secular terms, I think if either one of them heard all of the new studies we have about homosexuality, I think they'd both go, so? Tell me what I don't already know. Sexual feelings are very deeply ingrained. There may be inborn tendencies that contribute to them. We don't always want to live our lives as God intended us to live them, and therefore it can be very hard at times, and that's human nature. So Paul's education included quite a breadth of cultural knowledge, besides all of which, and this is very important, a prohibition inspired by God does not have a contingency. That is to say, when God says thou shalt not, he does not necessarily say thou shalt not, unless, of course, I haven't fully explained it to you, then you get a pass. Because there is a lot that God prohibits that we may not fully understand. I know this isn't the best analogy, but I've got an English bulldog. Where's this going, guy? Okay, I know. I just thought I'd tell you I have an English bulldog. Now let's get back to the session. No. Okay, and the guy, he's awesome. He's awesome. He's a big, aggressive, he looks like a big high school wrestler trucking around the house, and he's not to be messed with. If you cross Peter, that's his name, hasta la vista, you're gone. But he's a big sweetheart. He's got a very delicate digestive system. Peter can't handle anything but dry food. That's all he can handle. If you give him meat, if you give him table scraps, you give him anything else, he gets all sorts of stomach problems that you don't want me to even begin describing to you, but he gets them. So what happens? Does Peter understand that? No. What happens when we have dinner? Peter sits and looks at me with those big brown eyes, and he looks at me like I am an animal abuser. I am so cruel. And he begs with his eyes, and he pleads with his eyes, and he looks like an ad for the ASPCA when they say, this dog needs your help. Come rescue him, He's so pitiful. And it's just, and I'm like, guy, I love you. I know what you want, and I know you don't understand this, but no, I have to say no. And he's like, why? You wouldn't get it. You're not capable of understanding the intricacies of your digestive system, but I'm telling you, I know better than you about this. If I say yes to what you are asking, it will hurt you. So I have to say no without you understanding why. When I was called to repent of homosexuality, I couldn't have told you why. All I knew was God forbids this. All right, God forbids it. Why? I don't know. I don't see who I'm hurting. I could love a man. I could partner with a man. I'm not violating anybody. I'm not breaking any laws. I don't know what the big deal is, but okay, God, you said no. It would be years before I realized there's a design with theological and psychological and relational implications. We are designed for male-female union precisely because there is such a contrast between the two of us, and there is a contrast between the two of us because we, male and female, are created in God's image. Thereby, to bypass the female part of that union is to bypass an essential part of God's image. In trying to bond with males, I was thereby bypassing a part of God's image that I was meant to bond with if it was going to be a sexual union. And I learned that I had a capacity for intimacy with a woman that I never had with a man. I tried bonding with men. The longest relationship I ever had with a guy was 6 months. And I had about 5 of those. Shoot, I dated my wife 1.5 years before I even proposed to her. Then we were together another 1.5 years, and we were together 3 years before I even married the woman, and it's been 32 years now. Why? Because there is a complementarian quality to the male-female union that cannot exist between a man and a man or a woman and a woman. We are built differently, and because of the way we are designed, our emotional and physical makeup are indeed different by design. My problem with homosexual unions is not that they are sexually homosexual. The problem I have with them is they are absent the opposite sex. And thereby they cannot have the fullness in representing God's image that a male-female union can have. And for that reason, I believe we will always find this to be true. Studies, even today, consistently indicate the longevity of heterosexual unions versus the short-lived nature of homosexual unions. Why? Because homosexuals are inferior? Because they can't love each other? Because they're psychologically damaged? No. Shoot. I can tell you plenty of gay and lesbian people who are smarter than most heterosexuals I know. And to be honest, I can tell you that a lot of them are a lot more likable than a lot of heterosexuals I know. And in many cases, some of the most honorable people I've known have been lesbians and gays. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with the male-female nature. The union of male and male or female and female cannot produce the same emotional content that a heterosexual union can, nor can it provide the same parenting skills and attributes that a male-female union can. And for all of those reasons, now I think I get it that, wow, God called me to say no to something without me understanding why back in 1984. But the more I grow in understanding what men and women can be to each other, the more I realize why he called me to do something that was in my own best interest. What I have with my wife, it's 1,000 times better than anything I had with a guy. Now I think I get it. There are also theological ramifications. That union God created in his own image has also been bestowed the highest honor that can be bestowed on a human relationship. It is a type of God's relationship to his people. In the Old Testament, the male-female union is a type of God's relationship with Israel. In the New Testament, it's a type of Christ's relationship with his church. There are divine implications to that union that cannot be realized in a homosexual union. So for all of those reasons and more, I begin to realize that we do not have to have a perfect knowledge of the reasons behind God's prohibitions in order to accept those prohibitions. In fact, one of the most mind-bending books of the Bible, I think, is the book of Job, and it is a mind-bender. Because here's a righteous guy, did nothing wrong, and God allows him to go through hell on earth because of a contest that Satan has tried to initiate with God. And you know what? Job never got the answer. Not really. He poured out his heart to God, and God's answer to him was basically, I'm God, you're not. Now, that's not an easy thing to digest, but it is true. God loves us. God is gentle with us. God will show us favor, But let you and I never forget this. God doesn't owe us an explanation. God doesn't answer to us. God will show us a lot. I really believe most of our questions get answered, but some of them don't. And God's under no obligation to fully explain. But on this issue, I think he's explained it pretty well. What he designed for our own best interest. And if you look at just the testimony of anatomy, male anatomy and female anatomy, you see a very plain design. That design is not just in the body, it's in the soul as well. We are complementary. So for all of those reasons, I believe that the authors of the Bible had a good understanding of sexuality, and I believe the divine design is evident to any observer. And that leads to a last question. Is this not the new civil rights issue? Isn't this the same as, for example, the African American civil rights issue? Now, when I was a boy, I'm 64 years old now, I was a boy in the late 50s and early 60s. I was born in 1954. When I was still in elementary school, first, second, third grade even, segregation was still legal. And in America, there were places where it was perfectly legal for a white restaurant owner to say, nope, can't eat here, you're black. We don't want you. And there were theaters that would say, nope, whites only. Hotels, whites only. Restaurants, whites only. Drinking fountains. Black and white people couldn't drink at the same drinking fountain in plenty of states. That was a reality. And that was an evil thing that we've never forgotten. And we'll probably never get over it. I mean, not to get all political, that's not what I mean to do, but I believe this to be a great nation, a really great nation with a great, great history, but it's not a perfect history. And the racial issue is proof that it's not a perfect history. That is a terrible shame we still feel. Now, one of the smartest things I believe the gay rights movement ever did was to say, okay, let's jump on that. Americans feel guilty about racism. What if we can convince them that disapproval of homosexuality is the same as racism? Then we've got them. Because nobody wants to be racist. No decent person wants to be racist. And if you can convince people that they're racist or that their beliefs are the same as racism, you can cause them to be very ashamed and you can silence them. And what's more, you can get the public to silence them as well. Now, let me take a crazy example, okay? I live in Orange County, in the city of Orange. I can't imagine this ever happening, but what if the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, came into my neighborhood and opened up a shop where they put out their materials saying that African Americans are animals and that they should be hanged and that we should stay away from them and that they're a danger to us. We should have nothing to do with them. I would think, well, that's disgusting. I believe in free speech, so I guess they have a right to be there, but that's horrible. Now, what if somebody burned the shop down? What would I really feel about that? I would think, yeah, that's wrong, they shouldn't have done that. I would feel, yeah, good, I'm glad. Because what they believe is so foundationally evil, I have no sympathy for them. Well, believe it or not, right now, as you and I are talking, people are being taught that because we believe what we believe about marriage and sex, we are in the same category as the KKK. We're the same as Nazis. We're the same as fascists. And when people come to believe that we are that evil because of what we believe, you know what the public's going to do? They're going to say those Christians are dangerous, strip away their rights. It's perfectly okay. That's why it was brilliant for the gay rights movement to co-opt the civil rights movement. But there's quite a difference between the two. The comparison doesn't hold up well. Racists believe that other races are foundationally inferior. So, for example, racists in the South that wouldn't serve African Americans, they just said, we don't want anything to do with you, don't come near us. No Christians are saying that to gays and lesbians. Some Christian business owners are saying, hey, I welcome your business. I respect you. I like you. But don't ask me to do flowers for a same-sex wedding. That I don't agree with. But if you have a birthday coming up, or if you're graduating from university, I'll be glad to serve you. See, racists wouldn't say that to African Americans. They'd say, we don't want anything to do with you. Christians are only saying there are some parts of your life we don't approve of, but we don't look down on you. We don't believe we're foundationally superior. There are parts of what you celebrate that we cannot celebrate. That is all. Besides all of which, even when I was openly gay and a gay activist, I never really liked this argument. Because when people said, I would go to colleges and debate people, and people would say, Joe, you should say that this is the same as the civil rights movement. I would say, well, yeah, but gays were not kidnapped from another country and ripped away from their family and shipped over here in inhumane conditions and bought and sold and raped and tortured and beaten and dehumanized. That never happened in this country to gays and lesbians. It did happen to blacks. So there's quite a difference. And for those reasons, no, I don't believe it's a new civil rights issue. Now, does that mean that we shouldn't care about gay rights? No. If gays are being bullied, we should be their first defenders. We should be the first ones to protect their dignity. We should be good neighbors to them. We should show them respect and love and affection. That is all true. But it is intellectually dishonest to say that Christians who believe homosexuality falls short of God's will are in the same category as racist, because we are not. Now, where does that leave you? If you are presented with these questions and you give these answers, what kind of response are you going to get? Sometimes very good. Sometimes very good. You'll find a lot of gay and lesbian people are very reasonable, and they'll accept reasonable responses. And some won't. What I hope you will never do is assume that if somebody rejects what you're saying, you must have said the wrong thing or said something in the wrong way, because that is not true. A lot of people rejected Jesus and what he was saying, and there was nothing wrong with what he said or the way he said it. We do not determine whether or not we spoke the truth by how well it was received, because there will always be those who will not receive truth. The question becomes, were you faithful in expressing the truth, and did you express it in love? That's why God said through Jeremiah 23:29, he that has my word, let him speak it faithfully. Because remember this, when you and I stand before God to answer for how we have stewarded truth, we will not be asked how many people we persuaded. We will not be asked how many people agreed with us. How loving we were, faithful we were in expressing the truth, and how loving we were when we expressed it. And my hope for all of us is that we will always be both. Thank you very much.